Hello and welcome to Fire Headlines, where we discuss the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion, and joining me on the panel is Chief Kehmna. Today, we're diving into a unique therapy program that's making waves. Industrial Artistic and Creative Therapy, otherwise known as IACT. This program is geared towards helping first responders and veterans cope with stress and PTSD through blacksmithing. It offers therapeutic outlets while participants learn new skills and bond with others facing similar struggles. Ken, you and I were chatting a little bit before the recording, and you actually have some experience with blacksmithing. So can you please share that with some of our listeners?
Well, experience is a strong word. I would say that the therapeutic aspects of something like blacksmithing, I'm experiencing firsthand and have been for a little while now. And I can, not knowing that I was participating in it, I have been doing this myself. I fell down the rabbit hole of metalsmithing and blacksmithing a while ago, and it has just been a wonderful journey. So I was so happy to see this topic come up.
So how did you find yourself? Like, is it YouTube videos that you're watching or, quick little Facebook videos? How did you find yourself exposed to this therapeutic outlet?
Well, it's been on my radar screen for a long, long time, and I'll tell you I think its roots are really in sort of just my passion for creating and art in general. My son and I have spent a considerable amount of time in the garage and in the shop together doing a variety of different things. And probably the greatest creative outlet that I can lean back on and say that was a big thing for us was my daughter was a competitive dancer. And because she was a competitive dancer, I participated in helping make props for her dance company. And so my son and I got very involved in building props. And it just continued to grow in terms of complexity, and our shop got better, and the things that we would be willing to try and do just got better and better and better over time. And it really planted the seed for he and I for this need for a creative outlet, an artistic outlet, and the ability to be able to do these kinds of things. So I think it's really rooted in that. The metal aspect of it, whether it's fabricating or welding or now blacksmithing, that has always been something that interested me, but it seemed really out of touch until about maybe 5, 6 years ago. And I finally, it was YouTube. I started, sort of nerding out and listening to podcasts, and nerding out and following other makers and what they were doing. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to finally jump in and give this a try. And it was a lot of fun. My son and I were from the Bay Area in California originally. And I don't think it's there anymore, but there used to be a thing called the Maker Fair, and we used to go to the Maker Fair, and it was all things maker. It was, woodworking, it was metalworking, it was painting and crafting and all kinds of things. And it was there that I was first exposed to the blacksmithing community, watching what they were doing. And I was immediately like, I am interested in this. This looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just like you were saying, doing it with your son, I'm sure that was a great bonding opportunity, which is something that this program highlights, is the ability to connect with others as well. So I want to ask, what are your thoughts on alternative healing methods like this? And do you think that they can complement traditional mental health treatments?
I couldn't say yes more. 1,000% yes, absolutely. And I will tell you from my own firsthand experience, the answer to that is yes, because I know it from I came into the house 2 weeks ago from my shop, and I'd been spending, I don't know, I'd been out in the shop all day long just doing one thing or another, and I came in, and we've recently moved to a new home with an actual shop. I've had a garage for forever, and that's gotten more sophisticated over time. But now I have a legitimate shop where I can actually get things set up. I was telling my bride, I said, had I known how much joy I would get from the space and being in the space and just spending time, I would have done this. I would have done this a long, long, long time ago. Some of it's tangible and some of it's very intangible. It just has this kind of feed your soul thing about it that I really was like, okay, that is legitimately a thing, and it's 100% therapeutic. I can go in there with lots of things on my mind and come out very relaxed, even when there are struggles in the shop where something's not going quite right, or you've cut it twice and it's garbage or whatever the case may be. It has a very therapeutic aspect for me. So I would say, in answering your question, yes.
Yeah, that is so wonderful to hear. And it's the fulfillment you get out of I made this or I did this or even just the tinkering to get your mind off of something, right? Like for some people that's working out and maybe some of these first responders or veterans aren't able to, weight lift like they used to. So it's another easy outlet for them to relieve some of that, right?
Yeah, I equate it to so when I first learned how to scuba dive a long, long time ago. A friend of mine was getting married, and he was doing so in a location where scuba diving was going to be a thing. And I said, okay, I will get certified before we take this trip so that I can actually go scuba diving with everybody when I'm there. And the one thing I recognized almost right away was that it's such an immersive experience that everything else sort of just fades away. And you get this, you're totally in the moment of whatever that thing, whatever it is when you're diving, whatever you're looking at or whatever. And I'll never forget it. So when I find those kinds of things that do that same immersive sort of cleansing of all the white noise around everything else, I recognize it. And being in the shop and doing metalworking has been that for me. And I don't have a birdhouse factory or anything that I have to make whatever. I don't have a thing that I'm like, oh, I'm always making these. I don't have that. It's very much in the moment, whatever it happens to be. I enjoy making tools for my shop as much as I may enjoy making things in my shop or fixing things in my shop. It's a creative process that is both intellectual and artistic and just really interesting. And it has been a really interesting outlet.
That's amazing to hear. So, as a retired fire chief who's experienced the highs and the lows of the fire service, can you explain to us how important it is for first responders to have that safe space to connect and support each other outside of the firehouse?
I have a really good friend who retired about the same time I did, and we occupied different spaces in the organization, different ranks in the organization, but we have been very, very close almost since the first time we met. And he is on a similar journey as well with blacksmithing. And he and I will get together and we can talk fire service all day long. But it has always been the the friendship and the other things that we will connect on that is therapeutic. Long before we both got into blacksmithing, it was whatever the topic might have been. And having that, having the ability to connect with somebody else who understands you and you can be free and open with and be honest with is such an important part of just being part of the human existence that it is therapeutic from just that aspect. Now that we nerd out on blacksmithing is fun because not only are we interested in the same topic, but we recognize the similar vulnerabilities we have, what we don't know, what we haven't experienced yet, things that we're trying for the very first time and failing at together, 150 miles apart. And so we're sort of sharing the trials and tribulations and the fun and the chaos of it all. We're sharing all of that over the phone or over video chat, whatever it happens to be. One of the things that I enjoyed the most about the fire service is the people you work with and the relationships that you build, the camaraderie, the tribe that you have. And I think a lot of us when we're post fire service, we lose that tribe. And so it's really important to make those connections. And I think that this program giving veterans and first responders a chance to connect on something other than what they did in the military or in public safety is huge because it touches something that's really important without, focusing on your public safety career or your military career or anything like that. It's like, no, it's a human connection. And so I think that's where these things really are so important.
Yeah, this is making me think also about when athletes, whether it's at the high school level or the collegiate level, or even the professional level, when if an injury prevents them from furthering their career or just simply age or what have it be, there's always that sense of like identity lost. And I
Mm.
feel like that's very similar to the fire service because this is not your average job. This is a family. We've talked about that multiple times. And so when you're eventually leaving the fire service, you feel like maybe you're leaving part of your family or your identity behind. And so I think having an outlet like this, whether it is blacksmithing or even if it's just outdoor activities like biking or if it's just arts like painting or clay making, whatever it may be, it brings back a sense of accomplishment, achievement, purpose, and identity maybe back to you as well.
Yeah, I was talking to a good friend of mine who's really into music, and he plays multiple musical instruments. He's now, super into vinyl and chasing, the all the different aspects of experiencing music on vinyl versus, the digital music that a lot of us are familiar with today. And we were talking about seeing an artist that is going to be coming to his area in a live show. We very quickly fell deep into the rabbit hole about music and the art and the layers of art that all come together to create music. The songwriters, the production aspect, the musicians, and all those things, and how they layer together. And I think, to kind of tying this back to the blacksmithing thing, what you find is that creative process and the parts of it they really feel good because you're doing something, you're creating something, you can identify with somebody who's doing the same thing and is at a different place in their creative journey than you, that you can either learn from, or you can teach them something, or you can experience it together and explore it. It creates this kinship and this relationship around something that is unique. And I would say this very much like music, the blacksmithing thing is it's complex enough, understanding metallurgy and the right temperatures to heat things to as you're forging them, and all the different things that you're doing. There's so many things to learn and so much to know that it sort of opens your world to that is it's not just you make it hot and you smash it with a hammer. It can be that, I guess. It can be that simple, but it's more than that. And just knowing that there's more there, I think, is a great connection for us as humans because it kind of takes you out of yourself a little bit. You talk about the loss of identity. I think as we come closer to retirement, and I would put myself in this category, you start to focus in on yourself and your role in what you're doing in your occupation and your contribution to the organization and to the community. And it becomes very, myopic in that this is how I see it. And it's harder to see some of the other things. So as you explore art and you explore music, whether it's or mountain biking or athletics or whatever, you start to see that there's more stuff, that wasn't it. That was something that you did, and you may have done it extremely well, but that is not you in your totality. There's so much more to you and what you're capable of and what you are and all the other stuff. And I think art helps us do that. It helps see ourselves through a different lens so that there's not oh, I'm not a fire chief anymore. Okay, but you're so much more. You have always been so much more than that. And from a just a healing perspective, whether it's the trauma that you physically saw or dealt with as a first responder, or the emotional pain and suffering that you had as an administrative chief officer, had it, been there, still working through it. These things help you sort of put all of that into a context where it's less painful, less confusing, more tolerable. And it doesn't just happen. It's like, removing very thin layers one at a time, because it's, nothing's magic. But it does it. It does it. And then you go back and you struggle with it, and then you sort of ebb the other direction. So it's
I think that a lot of people are going to be able to relate with exactly what you just said. And there is ebbs and flows to it, absolutely. So what we're talking mostly about, maybe post-career, this is like a good hobby or something like that to pick up. How do you think that firefighters currently in service can implement these kinds of, whether you want to call them hobbies or outlets, what have you? How do you believe that they can implement that while they're still serving in the fire service? Like, and maybe that comes down to work-life balance, time management, stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head right there. It's about understanding that there is such a thing as work-life balance, that to acknowledge that there is a need to take care of yourself, that there is a need for work-life balance, is not the antithesis to having a strong work ethic and being an outstanding, leader or first responder. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not one or the other. It can be both. And it doesn't mean that you can't put your heart and soul and energy into the work that you do. But what it does mean is you can also explore and experience and grow. You can read, you can write, you can paint, you can do any number of different things. And it doesn't have to be. And I'm in a kind of a luxurious place right now. I talked about I'm in a shop, which is what has been a thing for me for so long. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to have, 1,000 square feet of workspace to do this stuff. And you can do it in your garage. You can do it anywhere, whatever it happens to be, to allow the left brain to sort of take you on this kind of like anything's possible can happen at any point in your career. And it's so balancing for you to take yourself out of what is so serious and so structured and so important, and allow yourself to be like, yeah, left, right, up, down, whatever color it happens to be, whatever tune I happen to play on the instrument, it's okay because it's just creative. It's really important. I mean, it really is a pressure relief mechanism that I think you can incorporate at any point in your life. I think from a leadership perspective, it's and I've said this to so many people coming into public safety, coming into the fire service. We sit down and we do very structured interviews, and why do you want to be a firefighter, and tell us about all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm in the fire academy, or I'm a paramedic and I'm doing all these great things. That's awesome. Who are you? Tell me who you are and what you're about and what you're into. I as a fire chief doing the chief's interview, I used to love digging into the things that were unique about people, the languages that they spoke, the journeys that they'd been on in their life, the experiences that they had, because that's what makes them who they are. It's not just the fire service. Who you are is such an important part of the contribution you're going to make to the organization, because people are going to want to get to know you and what you're all about and your family and all the other kind of stuff. And acknowledging that early in your life, I think has a tremendous amount of value in keeping you healthy and helping you process trauma as it's happening, and certainly in retirement.
Yeah, so you having picked up this hobby only 5 to 6 years ago, that alone, I really hope inspires some of our listeners. It is never too late to pick up a new hobby or a new outlet for this, whether it be stress, whether it just be extra time on your hand, it's never too late. But I want to ask you, when you would come across some of those firefighters who their identity was just firefighting, what were some of your conversations like with them or recommendations you had to them? Because that that could very easily be detrimental to somebody to only have the identity of a firefighter or, like I was saying earlier, an athlete or something. What kind of stuff would you share with them?
Yeah, kind of going back to what I was saying before, one of the things that have always been really focused on is whenever I'm with, members of, whether it's my organization or whatever, I'm always really aggressive about being the one to ask questions. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about you. Tell me more about what you're doing and your family and your experiences, and really just always trying to pull them out of where they are and what they are from a public safety perspective and see them as a whole person. That's always been really, really important to me. I mean, I came to the fire service in high school. I mean, there was no question at 16 years old, this was it. I was doing it. I am a firefighter. And over the course of my life, I've really come to appreciate what a wonderful opportunity that was to know so early on what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life and the purpose that I wanted to sort of make my career after. That is a blessing. But not seeing myself as only that was also really, really important for my own happiness and my own journey. Mental health to be sure, but not even thinking about it in that perspective. It was just about keeping myself happy. Throughout my life, the people that I've worked with, especially as I get older and I see young folks who are really driven in that, firefighter identity or that public safety identity, not just firefighters, but public safety identity. I think it's just natural for me to like, I'm going to pull you out of that. I want to know about the books you read. I want to know about if you tell me you've been on a mission trip, I am going to talk to you about your mission trip. If you told me that you have traveled and spent time staying in a youth hostel or backpacking across Europe, that's the story I am most interested in because that is the story that is that is you with everything, all the artifice sort of stripped away. It's a thing that changed you from something you were to something you are now. That transformative aspect of whatever that was is so much more interesting to me than the fire academy that you went. I went to a fire academy, okay, great. Tell me about that you climbed Machu Picchu or whatever. Ugh, that's the thing. So and it's really about the transformative aspect of those kinds of things that for me, you started as one thing, you came out as something else, and that right there, that's an experience that's worth sharing with others because that's a gift. Because I didn't do that, but I get to experience it through you telling your story about what you did. That's why I'm most interested in that. So that's kind of how I do it.
And I will say you are extremely good at that. And I've had other chiefs too, where some of them are also good at asking personal questions, but it's not just a personal question to fill up, dead space. It's personal questions that they then ask follow-up questions on. And then of course you have the other chiefs who are just, all right, what's on the agenda? X, Y, and Z. All right, let's figure that out. So if some of our fire service listeners or leaders hear this, if you only get one takeaway from this episode, asking your firefighters or your personnel those more personal questions and emphasizing on that or having them elaborate on that, that can go miles, miles and miles and miles. It reinforces, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that they're not just a firefighter. They're an individual with very unique experiences and thoughts and ideas. So thank you so much for sharing that, Chief Kenma. Is there anything else that you'd like to share on this topic?
Yeah, as you were just talking there, it just sort of reminds me of how important it is that we make a human connection. The work that we do can be so important and traumatic and difficult and all of those other things. And recognizing the need for human connection within ourselves is not only important for us as leaders to do with the folks that we work with. That is critical. It is important that we do it with one another, and it's important that we recognize that is. I mean, at a fundamental level, we're human beings. We have needs, and we're a tribal species by nature, and we need that human connection. And acknowledging that and understanding that, I think makes us better colleagues and friends and better people just to be around. It makes us better at our job, makes us better at our job. The people that are the recipients of our service, whether it's emergency medical services or whatever the case may be, are human beings who need human connection. Certainly, we have an emergency that or a condition that we need to mitigate because there's a hazard or it's something that's going on. But that human connection, sometimes just somebody just holding somebody's hand and sort of talking them through a difficult event, that's it. That's the medicine that they needed in that moment. And acknowledging that in yourself, that you're part of that tribe that also needs that, makes it a more natural thing to give to others. And I think what a great thing that we can do with our time together on this big blue, sphere, is give each other the experience that we need so much as human beings, and give each other the grace and all of that.
Yeah. And, to kind of build off of that, I will acknowledge that it's hard for some people to do that. It's hard for them to hold someone's hand and listen, or be an open outlet for them to talk to. I understand that for some people that's hard, especially in the fire service, where you might have developed a harder shell after some of the things that you've seen. So if you don't find yourself as someone who is able to do that, at the very least, there's resources that you can point them to or guide them to, or probably even somebody that that can do that for them. I'm not asking someone to be, we're not asking someone to be like the ultimate human being that can be a great leader and a great, shoulder to cry on, but then also like the strict boss, like, you know what I mean? Like, not everyone's personality is that rounded, but there are resources to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have talked a lot about mental health, the need for a good mental health and mental health care. It is critical, not just for first responders. It's critical for all of us. And don't be afraid, to ask if you need it, or if you have a friend or a loved one who is in need of it. Don't be afraid, because it is. We only get one chance at this. It is the most important thing we can do, is to care for one another, to care for ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chief Kehmna, for sharing your insights on this topic today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. A link to the article we discussed can be found in the show notes of this episode. And we'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.